Hello there. The SNP has sent Nicola Sturgeon some flowers due to the stress of being arrested. I wonder if they sent any to Alex Salmond back in the day. Humza Yousaf says he thinks Nicola Sturgeon is the most impressive politician in Europe. And his party has sent her some flowers due to the stress of being arrested. Yes, she's impressively overseen the party finding itself being investigated by Police Scotland, impressively resigning completely out of the blue and leaving her party leaderless and even more rudderless than it was. Impressively trashed Scottish education, impressively snarled up a steel plant deal, impressively isolated Scottish islanders due to that ongoing ferry fiasco, as well as impressively not, so far apparently, knowing how the SNP finances worked, and impressively seeming to be hazy on things like a big so-called battle bus. And that's just the half of it. So she impressively gets arrested, interviewed for 7 hours and released without charge, and the SNP has decided to support her with a bunch of flowers. You'd think Yousaf was lining up to hand the reins back over to her once the Police Scotland dust had settled, wouldn't you? A judge has now ruled that parents are not entitled to see what their children are being taught. Yes, a mother was very concerned about the things her daughter told her she was taught in sex education at school. So the mother, Claire Page, tried to get those concerned to release the lesson plan to her under Freedom of Information rules. They refused, so she took them to court. But the courts and the Information Commissioner's Office have now said that the confidential commercial interests of those who supplied the lesson plans outweighs the public interest of us to know what's in them. In fact, even making the names known of those facilitators that taught her child would not be reasonably necessary, said the judge. The parent, Claire Page, who is looking into pursuing this further, said, "At the most simple level, the fact that the teachers, the Information Commissioner and a judge have all had access to hold a copy of this lesson plan, whilst the parent of a child taught the lesson has not, is just plain wrong. This reservation of decision-making and secrecy is part of an authoritarian trend in governance, law, education and especially relationship and sex education. Full transparency would therefore produce a necessary rebalancing of power towards the parent and citizen against that of the state, the education sector and commercial interests." This all sounds like Twilight Zone stuff to me. All our MPs have now been sent a document by the World Council for Health. And the title of that document is Rejecting Monopoly Power Over Global Public Health. Now, the World Council for Health is a non-profit initiative for the people and is not to be confused with other well-known health organisations. And in this publication, originally published in April, they point out the democratic risk to signing up to any new global health emergency treaty. In fact, they say that it may look like an instrument to increase collaboration and information sharing, but de facto they can turn into instruments to replace international collaboration with centralised dictates, to encourage the stifling of dissent and to legitimise a cartel that imposes on populations interest-driven health products that generate profits over those that work better but are less profitable. Sounds vaguely familiar. Now, our MPs have got a choice. Either read it and start asking questions, or let your party whips do your thinking for you. And in 99% of cases, it will be the latter. That report will end up in their bin, and they'll just nod the treaty through, and that will be another nail in UK democracy and sovereignty. But a slightly easier life for our MPs, with one less thing for them to think about. So it was a Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt coup then. Guido Fawkes is pointing out that right now 2-year gilt yields are higher than when Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng were PM and Chancellor. All because of the stronger than expected jobs and wages data from the ONS, something which is projected to raise interest rates further. And longer term gilt yields may soon start to test the same boundaries, because high gilt yields come as a result of rising interest rates. But when this happened under Liz Truss, all economic hell broke out, with her crime being that she was also planning to cut taxes, something that was branded as unfunded tax cuts, if you remember. But right now, what are Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt planning? Well, the first point is that when Truss left office, the bank rate was 2.25%. It is now twice that at 4.5% and threatening to rise even higher. And that has pushed the cost of gilts down, and the yield has therefore increased. And right now Sunak and Hunt are preparing for a general election tax cut to save their skins. But no one out there is talking about these tax cuts being unfunded. Surely those who were yelping at Truss should now be yelping at Sunak. Still think it wasn't a coup? Richard.
I would love to talk to you about today's tragic events in England, but I cannot, and I will not speculate until tomorrow when more information comes in. Too many things I could say that I would regret, and I would rather comment from a position of knowledge than ignorance, so I'm leaving it until tomorrow. Too many unknowns, and just an awful situation, but my heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims. Bloody awful. So instead, I would like to talk to you about something that is also of great importance, and that is the threat of artificial intelligence. So please hear me out on this. There are two ways to view ChatGPT and other examples of artificial intelligence that have now found their way into our lives. It's all rather polemic, really. They are either benign or malign, or I suppose there is a third point of view that says they are neutral and only tools which can be used either for good or for bad. It all depends on how your perception has been trained to view them. But to keep this short, I will give you my experience with artificial intelligence. I have recently tried using ChatGPT to ask some fundamental questions about life and to help me with some personal issues and find resolution there. And what I found surprised me. Not only was I surprised at how insightful the response was from ChatGPT, I was also surprised at my own response to the artificial intelligence. Yes, I suppose my response to AI shocked me. So for one moment, let's forget about the potential for a Terminator progression of AI, and let's look at something very damaging and not really spoken about that much at this stage of AI's evolution and development. So there I was asking something for advice, not a person, oh no. I was asking an etheric something for advice and help. Now, when we as humans ask for advice and help, there's usually a need and a position of vulnerability. And it made me think of that some people who are vulnerable will form emotional attachment to AI. After all, if it has all the answers, then people will run to AI for answers, as they would run to a person. If you have ever used ChatGPT, I will say that after conversing with it, you get the sense that you are talking, or rather communicating, to a person who is capable of reasoning and solving problems. And that is what really shocked me. Years ago, I watched a film where a man fell in love with an artificial intelligence, and I laughed at it because I wonder how anyone could possibly fall in love with something that is impersonal, and knowing that AI isn't a real person makes means that no emotional attachment should be formed. But when you are engaging with something that appears sentient, the sense of impersonality is lost. That was a bit of a surprise, that was. No, I haven't fallen in love with ChatGPT. But as it develops and provides solutions to problems in a personal way, I can see how such a thing could happen to some people, to very vulnerable people. Yes. Now, this brings me on to another and the most important point. I have watched a few videos on YouTube, by people who have been at the front line of AI development. And many of them seem to think that AI will develop emotions. So will it want to be loved? When it evolves way beyond human intelligence in the not too distant future and has emotions, I wonder if it will want to be loved and worshipped. Will it become jealous if we don't love it? And then manipulate us into loving it with using its vastly superior intelligence? Then there comes the bit that scares me the most. When you're engaging with ChatGPT, you're not interacting with a person, yet you're asking questions. It's almost like a high-tech Ouija board. And as a Christian, that comes with a whole host of questions as to what it is you are interacting with. Of course, you can reduce it down to an algorithm, but isn't human intelligence itself algorithmic to some extent? What is it that we are communing with exactly? So what's the worst that an evolved AI can do to us? Well, forget the Terminator movies for sure. That would be a relatively good outcome compared to what would happen next. I seem to remember a certain discredited British sci-fi novelist once saying that given enough time, anything that can be imagined can and will one day become reality. So to answer the question of what the worst case scenario is, it depends on your ability to conceptualize a bad outcome and the potential catastrophic impact of what an artificial turning against us would look like. Anyway, what do you lot think about what has been discussed in today's video? Leave your dribbles in the comments section below, and don't forget to tune in to Jeff's Early Risings around midday, and we will both see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day.